P.O.L. Game Review.
Hey, what up kids and cadets? This is IntraVenus here from P.O.L Music and P.O.L Game Review. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 interesting, maybe rare, maybe good, survival horror games for the PlayStation 2. That's right, we're going to go back in time, almost 20 years. So check it out, we're going to go with the XFiles, Resist or Serve, The Suffering, Ties That Bind, Siren, and Clock Tower 3. So y'all stay tuned and let's get into it. We're gonna get gameplay and I'm gonna tell you my first impressions and whether I played it longer than first impressions. Let's get into it. Alright y'all, first off we're gonna talk about the XFiles, Resist or Serve, from Vivendi Universal. This is a very interesting game. In fact, this is probably one of my favorites of this collection. This game starts with an intro, the exact intro from the TV show, The X-Files. And if you grew up in the 90s, you know the feels for this. And so this actually takes place in a certain timeline of The X-Files. I want to say it was season 7 or something like that. But as we look into it, the controls are kind of hit or miss. It's mainly the camera angles, because sometimes you'll be walking right at the camera. You know which direction to press for walking, but you don't know what's next until you reach the next screen, which is kind of a little bit of a letdown. Though it does not have tank controls in the sense of the first couple Resident Evils. Actually the first 3. This goes in the direction that you point your joystick, your analog stick, and you can play as Mulder or Scully. In this video I chose Mulder, and it is very reminiscent to Resident Evil or Silent Hill games. Very, very reminiscent, very similar. The first missions start out with you trying to track down a couple of ladies that are into witchcraft. And as far as I know, I think Scully and Mulder have different stories. This is a really good game, and this is probably, among all of these, one of the most that I'll jump back into. The X-Files, Resist or Serve. The quiet town of Red Falls, which is in Colorado, that's where I am, hello, erupts in shocking, unexplainable violence, and Mulder and Scully find their new X-File has a deadly relationship to past cases they barely survived and would rather forget. In this original lost episode, in quotes, you will enter a treacherous world filled with authentic X-Files, mythology, thrilling challenges, and genuine terror. Battle horrific paranormal phenomena and conduct autopsies while in search of the truth. There's a lot of awesome little Easter eggs in here. In one of the first missions, you walk into a video rental store and there's some funny things to say, some funny things to see on the walls. I really like this game. Let's talk about the Suffering series. The Suffering, as far as I know, had 2 games. The Suffering 1 and The Suffering Ties That Bind. The important thing to note about the first Suffering is all the creatures were designed by Stan Winston Studios. If you all know Stan Winston, he did a lot of great props and live models for horror movies. Sometimes, if you love horror movies, and you'll know what I'm talking about, sometimes realistic recreations with models and live materials look better than CGI. A lot of the time, actually. The Suffering is a game that reminds me of something, a mix between Max Payne and less survival and a little more horror and beating up. Just chopping, slicing, shooting. I really like this game, actually, and as far as comparing things, I think The Suffering, which I've played through partially before, I'm going to probably play through this game. The Suffering 2 might be a different story. So coming up with The Suffering 2, it's called The Suffering Ties That Bind. This has some characters created by Stan Winston and some that were not. It's starring Rachel Griffiths and Michael Clark Duncan. Rest in peace, Michael Clark Duncan. This game takes it a little further. It's very similar, but in the same, it's very different because they give you the option of a first-person view. And honestly, both the first-person and the third-person view are a little too close to me. The visuals aren't quite right. I would love to play this game in first-person only, really. But it is... There's something not quite right about it. And then when you go in third person, you're like right over the shoulder. It's a little jarring. Could maybe give you some motion sickness if you don't like jumping between moving scenes. The graphics look better, and the idea is really cool. I like the idea of switching between third person and first person here. I wouldn't mind seeing a reboot of both of these games. Next up we have Siren. Siren is a very unique game, especially in the way they animate the motion when somebody's talking or when you have characters doing the video routine. You have characters that have what it seems to me realistic faces that are flashing between. It's almost like images flashing between in front of the face, so you'll see the face and the mouth blur into other emotions. And it looked good, but not that great. In fact, the Siren came out in 2004, and I feel like they could have done a little bit better by then. It's really hard. This game is really hard and confusing. I played through the first couple episodes. The first episode has you in front of some old cabin and the siren goes off and you have someone go crazy and you have to jump into a truck and leave while they're attacking you. And every day is a different scenario with a different mission. It's a good idea and I find it very unique and I want to play through this, but also it's a little confusing. From what I've noticed, you don't really attack your enemies, you just run from them. Kind of like Clock Tower. So last off, we have Clock Tower 3. I remember playing either the first and or second Clock Towers on PlayStation 1, the original PlayStation, and they were really stressful because you're basically running from room to room, hiding from someone who's walking slowly with giant shears, giant scissors that just wants to murder you. And so you go into different rooms, you hide under their beds and on top of bunk beds and stuff, and if you are hiding in there when he comes in, you never know. He might find out that you're in the top bunk and stab you through the bunk or whatever. It's a very, very anxiety-driven, stressful game, but really cool and unique in its sense. Clock Tower 3 takes it a step further, several steps further. In fact, I couldn't figure out exactly where to go eventually, but I only played it for like 15 minutes to get you guys footage. I played it previously, and I remember thinking the same, that it wasn't the same as the old Clock Tower. It's so much different, but the story is so enthralling, and there's scenes like when you go find a statue and it starts to cry blood and its head falls off and it gives you a note and stuff. This actually is one of the games that I really want to finish. This is probably right behind the XFiles, just because the story seems so intriguing and I want to see what happens if you actually get chased by the Scissor Man or if it turns into something else. There's this creepy old man as soon as you enter this mansion, which is very reminiscent of the Resident Evil mansion in structure, layout, and everything. It's its own thing. And the one thing about all of these games that I find most irritating at times, but it's actually part of the gameplay, it's part of the style of survival horrors, you have to walk around, you have to wander a lot, and you can pretty much click on anything. So you click on a painting, see if it gives you a hint. You click on something on a desk, it doesn't give you anything. Click on this, click on that, and you're going through doors and hallways trying to remember where you found locked doors and where you found keys. It's puzzle driven, and the puzzle isn't necessarily something puzzling. You just have to progress through the game and you'll get the keys and you'll get the stuff. It's drawn out, all of them, a little bit too far maybe, but I would say after all of these, if you want to play a game that is strictly survival horror in the reminiscence of Silent Hill and Resident Evil, I would go with the X-Files, Resistance or Serve. Resist or Serve. If you want to go for something that's a little more action-packed, still story-driven, but it's just kind of shooting and surviving and a little bit of puzzles, you would go with the Suffering series. Both these games seem pretty good. The first one I think might be my go-to. But hey, you never know. If you guys like these videos, please let me know, and please like and subscribe. And I have a collection of PS2 games. It's about 400 plus games, and I have so many more games to go through. So if you want to see me do another PS2 game video, gameplay, etc., then please let me know in the comments. I love y'all, and I hope you have a wonderful day and evening, and thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and I'll check you on the next one. Peace, please!
In the scene, remember back in the day when we could kick in the drink? Karaoke, wanna spit it with me? I'm carrying a spliff in the fifth of the tea, sticking in drinks. When sick, man, a different thing, and we could kill it in a cipher. Like words would have spread a virus by us vipers, hocking up on poisons, we're fighting with lyrics. Now it's like life is a different experience. We're thinking the fear in us, like a stick in the spirit. Should I follow my peers, or are they delirious? Man, I don't know, and it's still in my prime. Damn, ready to go, like one at a time.